Welcome back to Perfume Nation. I'm Maria, and today we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, a panther. Imagine a fragrance house that employs a once-in-a-generation perfumer, a house capable of making some of the most intellectually brilliant, chemically daring, quietly strange perfumes of the 21st century. Now imagine that this same house has almost no organics fragrance cult around it. There are no dedicated subreddits screaming over batch codes, no TikTok mobs camping out for the next drop, no rankings in the virality or compliment getters, no feverish collector mythology, no perfume people whispering Cartier in the way that they whisper Serge Lutens bell jars. Vintage Mugler. Nasamato before reformulation. Original Ubar from Amman. Instead, there is critical praise in glossy magazines, guarded boutiques with no samples available, limited, if at all, if any, distribution, releases that feel at best irregular and sometimes kind of cryptic. That is the Cartier Paradox. How does a house with real perfume art have so little perfume community? How does a brand capable of bottling ancient stone, horse mane, molecular memory, gothic incense, and diamond light also sell status hardware to every influencer, mistress, sugar baby, financier, and nouveau riche person who wants the risk to announce liquidity from across a restaurant? Today, we're taking the train through the treasure chest of history and facts and myths about Cartier and specifically Cartier Perfumery. Let's get into it. Cartier would love for you to imagine its history as one smooth, uninterrupted procession of luxury, ascension to king's orders, diamonds everywhere, well-designed panthers, and red velvet. And to be fair, the beginning is genuinely fabulous. The house begins in 1847 in Paris, where Louis-François Cartier takes over a small jewelry workshop. He was not born into some ancient dynasty of jewelers. He was born in 1819, and he was a son of a metal worker and a laundry woman. Before Cartier became a name whispered by royalty, it was a very practical Parisian trade story. Apprenticeship, craft, proximity to taste, proximity to money, proximity to power, which, as we know, does not equate power and it does not equate money. Cartier began as an apprentice under the master watchmaker Adolphe Picard. That apprenticeship mattered. It gave him technical discipline, access to tools, but it also placed him close to the emerging luxury tastes of Parisian clients. When Picard retired, Cartier bought the workshop on consignment and officially established the House of Cartier. So the origin story is not palace. It's not aristocratic legacy. It is craft. It is trade. It is watches, clients, maneuvering those relationships, maneuvering pricing, and trying to secure that next appointment, that next regular client, quietly and ruthlessly trying to make his way toward higher and higher aristocratic circles. What set Cartier apart early was a design sensibility that did not just obey the heavy ornamental styles of the mid 19th century. He moved toward lighter, more refined aesthetics. In a crowded world of elaborate decoration, Cartier began to understand the luxury of restraint. Even though if we look at those early designs now, they don't seem to be that minimalistic. That becomes important later because Mathilde Laurent's perfumes often behave in the same way. They're not maximalist in their seduction, but they're precise. They contain air, they have contours, and they exploit negative space. Cartier at its best is never just about expensive materials. It is about form. A diamond can be vulgar. Gold can be vulgar. A panther can be vulgar. Any symbol or sign can be of a bad taste no matter how expensive the materials are. The art is about constraint and proportions, or sometimes willful breakage of thereof. Cartier's first major social acceleration came through patronage. As I said, relationships with those wealthy clients. 1856, Princess Mathilde, cousin of Napoleon III, mind you, became a Cartier client. Princess Mathilde was an arbiter of Second Empire's elegance, by many historians' opinions, and her endorsement opened a lot of doors. Soon after, Empress Eugenie, a wife of Napoleon III, also became a client. This is the first Cartier lesson. Luxury is never just the craft. Luxury is proximity. Luxury is access. Luxury is a selective access. A jewel is a jewel, but a jewel seen on the right hand starts mythology. With royal patronage came money and visibility. Cartier moved to more prominent locations. Place du Palais Royal in 1853, the Boulevard des Italiens in 1859, all very iconic spots, very coveted, expensive spots to be right in the bloodstream of Parisian high society. Cartier finally made it. He understood that placement is part of the brand's aura, no matter the cost. As the 20th century opened, Cartier became truly global through Louis-François Cartier's grandsons, Louis, Pierre, and Jacques. At that point, it was still a family brand, a heritage brand. Louis ran the Paris branch and introduced some of the most important Cartier designs that we know now, including the Santa's watch in 1904. He also helped shape the Art Deco language of Cartier. We all remember those beautiful watches that somehow bring us almost together-ish with Salvador Dali aesthetic, including the tutti frutti jewels in 1920s and their carved colored stones, Indian inspiration, and rich chromatic exuberance. As you can see, there was quite a few colorful departures from so-called restrained minimalism that Cartier is touted for. Pierre expanded into the United States and opened the New York flagship in 1917. So we're right there on the verge of the First World War. Jacques oversaw London and served British royalty, including the tiaras and ceremonial pieces that make Cartier the jeweler of actual courts. Their ascension continues. King Edward VII famously called Cartier the jeweler of kings and the king of jewelers. Can you imagine to be on the top of your field to that degree? That quote, as true as it is almost too perfect. But then The royal carriage lost a wheel, then another one. By mid-20th century, right after those two world wars that many consider one big world war that happened into stages, Cartier was not one unified, invincible empire as it once was before the world wars. After the deaths of three Cartier brothers, the business got fractured. Cartier Paris, Cartier London, and Cartier New York became separate, independently owned and curated entities. The family magic disappeared. The family was dead. The modern luxury market was changing. Globalization was coming, and the three fractured business entities were not helping with that change in the winds in the business world. Consumer taste was shifting too. Family houses needed capital. Capital to globalize, to expand, to establish a unified and ever-present identity. They needed cohesion and they needed industrial discipline. It was no longer about craft. That was about capital, brand cohesion, industrial discipline. By 1960s and early 70s, Cartier was no longer simply the serene jeweler of kings. It was fragmented, it was financially strained, and was in danger of becoming a prestigious name attached to increasingly random, cheap, licensed goods. This is the part of luxury history that brands prefer to airbrush or skip altogether. Then come the financiers. In 1972, a group of investors led by Robert Hawke and Joseph Conoe, I hope I'm saying that right, acquired Cartier Paris and began the process of reunifying the brand. Alain Dominique Perrine also becomes central to this turnaround project. By 1979, the international branches were reunited under a single ownership structure. This is important because that will affect how all of the creative endeavors of Cartier should be perceived from them then on. This is where Cartier becomes modern Cartier as we know it. Not just a family jewelry of kings, but a managed, well-oiled luxury machine. And luxury machines need a lot of cash. And here comes the perfumery. The milking cow along the accessories, think bags and belts, of all luxury brands. The solution was Le Must Be Cartier, launched in 1973. This was affordable luxury before that phrase became a mall strategy and now devolved into fast fashion. So those proverbial lighters, pants, leather goods, accessories, objects that allowed people who were never going to buy a tiara still to buy a piece of Cartier. This was brilliant, that was democratic, that was also very dangerous. But perfumery did stick. The more people buy the logo, the more money you make. But the more types of people can touch the logo, the more you risk of flattening the myth and actually losing future buyers. So, the highest margin of luxury cash is undoubtedly perfume. It takes $2 to produce and you can sell it for, well, look at the market. In 1981, Cartier launched Must Be Cartier fragrance. It was a commercial success. It allowed the house to sell the scented liquid, the alcohol juice in glass bottle to middle class while still making diamond necklaces for the ultra rich. That was a much more appropriate separation of societal scales that they decided to monopolize on. It may sound cynical because it is cynical. It is also how the modern luxury works to this day. But going back to the 80s, perfume is a portal. Perfume is a small temple. It lets someone buy the dream without buying the necklace, the watch, and the bracelet. In a way, perfume is the most intimate and the most economically efficient luxury you can buy. And the profit margin, as I said, can be absurd, very pleasantly absurd to the stakeholders. Cartier followed with Santos de Cartier and Panther in 1987, and the Declaration that was released in 1998. For some reason, that I thought it was older. Think of the 90s. That is when all the marine and oceanic, fresh, zesty, piercing colognes and fragrances were all the rage. Declaration became a cult perfume. It still remains one of the classics in that genre. And yet, even that crown you cannot hold on to for too long. By the early 2000s, Cartier had the same problem many luxury houses had. Commercial fragrance can keep your name alive, but it also can make you smell like a gas station or duty-free that people just run through. Meanwhile, over at Hermès, Jean-Claude Ellena was showing a different model, how you can re-elevate perfume as yet again an aspirational product. Instead of simply licensing fragrance out to anonymous industrial labs, Hermès appointed a house perfumer and made fragrance part of its intellectual identity and product strategy. Cartier looked at that and said, "We got it. We understand the assignment." In 2005, Cartier appointed its first in-house perfumer, master perfumer, and that was Mathilde Laurent. And this is where the story becomes more interesting. The phrase in-house perfumer sounds now like corporate trivia, but it changes the entire power structure of what, when, and how gets produced. When you have a dedicated master perfumer, think art director of olfactory creations, in most designer fragrance, the house gives a brief to a fragrance company, the Big Four, or some people call Big Ten. The perfumer works under the layers of marketing, testing, cost controls, trend reports, brand politics, all the communication channels between the brand and the producer, the fragrance and flavor holding company. So the result may be beautiful, may be very wearable, but the authorship is fragmented. The cohesion of concept at that point is severely diluted with focus groups and whatnot. So a true in-house perfumer is a different style of making perfumes. It means the brand is trying to build a coherent olfactory language. It means the nose becomes part of the lore, not just as a supply chain, but a mind, a strategist inside the house. For Cartier, that mind was Mathilde Laurent. Laurent was born into the family of artists in Paris. She has studied chemistry and physics, but confessed that her true passion was photography. So she did learn a Diplôme d'études universitaires générales. It's a mouthful to pronounce. A friend noticed her olfactory sensitivity and suggested perfumery as a possible creative genre that she could become a professional in. That eventually led her to ISIPCA in Versailles, the legendary fragrance school, which is very hard to get into. They have very small classes. And then comes one of my favorite Mathilde Laurent details. She approached Jean-Paul Guerlain directly at a school event and secured a 3-month internship. That internship became an 11-year tenure at Guerlain. A lot of people don't quite remember that Mathilde Laurent, because she's been for such a long time an icon at Cartier, that she spent 11 years as an apprentice perfumer at Guerlain. Her own favorite perfumes are also hopefully revealing and will help us navigate why Cartier smells the way it does. She has named that Helmut Lang Haute Perfume, Rachat Femme, Grey Cabochard, Mitsuka, Vol de Nuit by Guerlain, Mugler Cologne as her favorites. But this is quite a list. If you think about what unifies these perfumes, you know that none of them are overly heavy or spicy. All of them have some green genre touching upon. That list is not the taste profile of somebody who is trying to be liked by everyone, that's for sure. It shows respect, yet certain departure from classical structure of olfactory design, and also certain weird, modern, inventive cleanliness. At Cartier, Mathilde had her own Salon de Parfums at the flagship boutique and built the high perfumery, Haute Perfumery collections, especially notable Les Heures de Parfum, the Hours. Her aesthetic is not overtly decorative, and by opinions of many, it is very structural. She often works with a small number of materials, focusing on the architecture between them rather than the stuffing the formula with a lot of ornamental nuances. This is very Cartier. A Cartier jewel is not supposed to look like a pile of expensive materials clumped together. You should look at a Cartier product, be it a perfume or an actual jewelry piece, and think this is the only way this could be. She said that in general, creating a perfume takes between 6 months to a year, and certain notes are very polite enough, according to her, to slip into place easily. Others refuse to yield. When I work on a perfume with a real initial accord, it is an intellectual journey. It takes me 100 to 150 tries to achieve a harmony. She thinks very visually, and also she said, for me, perfumery is photography, a nearly the same art. For me, smells have an image, and the photograph has a smell. So in my mind, it's exactly the same. They're always communicating. Her office, as people describe it, is filled with photographs. And also it's filled with the photographs of perfumes she created as, I presume, references. Mathilde Laurent also was one of the ardent defenders of synthetic versus natural debate. She insisted in many interviews and continued to defend the artistic position that all colors and all paint types have a place in the artist's vocabulary. She rejects this conspiratorial natural versus synthetic moral or health allegedly drama. She keeps reiterating through the years that it's the right time to do away with the naturals versus synthetics dichotomy. This matters because perfumery is not aromatherapy, and it's not spiritual bypassing wrapped with a chemistry degree. It is not virtue signaling in a bottle. Natural materials can be crude, can be dangerous for your health, can be muddy, can be unstable, as I said, allergenic. They can endanger the ecosystems by the nature of how they need to be produced, or sometimes they can be simply boring and not much variety can be created from them. Many master perfumers continue to try to deliver this known fact that the perfumery as craft and art started with introduction of synthetics. Also, Laurent said something that might explain why we smell what we smell in Cartier perfumes. She said, creating art and seeking consensus are, in my mind, contradictory. Laurent herself has made one of her great synthetic manifestos in modern perfumery, L'Heure Perdue. It's created from all synthetic materials. I've smelled it recently in Cartier boutique. My not so humble opinion, it is well-mannered but unimpressive. I would say it would fall into the genre of skin-like nude perfumes. As often with Laurent creations, I appreciate the concept, but I don't necessarily vibe with the final product. And that's kind of a theme personally for me. But before we go into Les Heures, let's talk about another Laurent obsession, getting perfume out of the bottle entirely. A lot of people don't know that in terms of olfactory art, design of scents, she creates what she calls osni, in translation, unidentified scented objects. This whole idea of creating soundscapes and olfactory scapes has been around forever. And Laurent is a big proponent of that idea. In 2017, for example, she collaborated with climate engineers at Palais de Tokyo in Paris to create a literal floating cloud of perfume trapped inside of a huge glass cube. Visitors walked up a spiral staircase into the scented weather system. The idea was very explicit, to take perfume out of the bottle and allow the public to discover the power of olfaction as a space, not as a particular consumer product. I love that idea that said, for better and for worse, scents are notoriously hard to contain and to manipulate outside of a bottle. It brings us back to the modern Cartier puzzle. On one side, Cartier is still attached to high culture. The foundation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain, Contemporary Art Foundation, established in 1984, is still a major contemporary art institution. It commissions serious avant-garde work. It belongs to the world of museums, architecture, patronage, artists, curators, big ideas, aristocracy, and the world of the elites. On the other side, if you walk outside of the museum and you look at what pays the bills, then we get the love bracelet, the Justin Clou, the nail. Historically, these designs had a subversive energy. The love bracelet, with its screw motif, had a locked-in erotic possession quality that apparently sells very, very well. No big surprise here. Justin Clou turns a nail into jewelry, which is kind of a great industrial gesture. It's witty, it's slightly perverse. It's also kind of hooliganist in a way, which I think contributed how it brought Cartier back to the forefront of the discussion. It's very rare to see the luxury brands to display any sense of humor, if at all. However, you wait long enough for something popular and it will dilute itself into the mass status grammar. The number of fake nails by Cartier that are clouding the gray markets and all of the reseller platforms, 99% of them are fake. People are stacking nails because, they cost $3 to make a clone of, as if you're wearing 10 stacked nail bracelets by Cartier. It turns itself upside down, becomes a farce of itself. Because it's so instantly recognizable, because it has becomes a status symbol, it photographs well, it just announces money, not even money, it announces devotion to the cult of money without requiring much taste. They've become the uniform of influencer wealth, the sugar babe aesthetics, the transactional Dubai trips where girls get paid in luxury goods, including Cartier bracelets, and people who want quiet luxury for clear reasons don't want to be associated with that. So it's not to say that the designs are bad. They're iconic for a reason, but there is, again, emerging a tiered structure in the way Cartier pursues product design. So Cartier now exists in this extraordinary split taste universe. It funds avant-garde art that nobody knows about. Well, no wide audience knows about it. It produces some of the most intelligent perfumes in luxury. It also sells some of the most recognizable status hardware on earth. What is behind that very clever, very tiered, socially, hierarchically manufactured product strategy? Behind all that is Richemond. Cartier, remember I told you, is no longer a quaint little family atelier. It is the crown jewel of Richemond, a Swiss luxury conglomerate with a dual-class share structure. What is it? The Rupert family, through Compagnie Financière Rupert, holds a minority of equity, but controls over half of voting rights at Cartier. This helps to explain why Cartier Perfume feels so strangely divided. They keep Cartier present in the department stores. They are Sephora-like environmental creations. They are mainstream with a veiled and echo hint of luxury, maybe. They give anyone a way into the house. They're not embarrassing perfumes. A lot of people call them in their top 10. For example, I really love Le Panther Parfum edition. I think it's one of the most beautifully designed modern shippers that is an homage to classical shipper as a genre in perfumery. It's so smooth. It's beautifully peachy yet sour. It has every facet of what a peachy shipper should be like. Le Panther Parfum is it, in my opinion. It's very soft at the same time. It's very feminine, which is rare for a shipper to be. So they carry commercial constraints, but they're still very well made. The artificially scarce halo, Les Heures, the Florals line, the Oud line. This is their prestige vault. In the glass case, behind the thick doors of the boutiques, to get into which you need an appointment. And ask me how I know. I tried several times. One time I had to stand in the wait list for half an hour before I was allowed to enter the boutique. That was, I would say, maybe had 10 people in it at the time total. I was also given a personal sales representative, almost like a concierge, a guardian that walked with me through the boutique at all times and talked to me at all times and never let me out of sight. So, but forget that. The Haute Perfumery lines by Cartier. These collections are very highly admired by critics. Some collectors hunt after them, sort of me included. But most people I talk to, including perfume reviewers, barely know they exist. This is what brings me to a very uncomfortable question that we have to ask. If Mathilde Laurent is so brilliant, where is her army? Cult followings usually form nearly spontaneously. People do recognize genius, but at the same time, cult followings, they need friction. They need polarization. They need people fighting in comment sections. They need perfumes that offend the wrong people so they can be defended by the right people. Cartier, because it is a hard luxury house selling watches, jewelry, and status to wealthy clientele, seems structurally allergic to true perfume chaos. Even its strange work is very conceptually polished to the point, at least in my opinion, that it is strangled to death. That's how polished and conceptual it is. Even its danger has manners. You know what I mean? Mathilde Laurent makes invisible jewelry. It's cold, faceted, intelligent, exact. And in itself, that could be a cult. But the internet doesn't always know how to worship a flawless diamond that you can't even look at. We usually prefer a little bit more life in our creations. We prefer a haunted doll, a leather jacket, some kind of scandal, and discontinued monster, something that gives us a chunk of raw emotion, even maybe some emotional damage. And yet, you can't say that her creations are not artistic. It's just the red velvet rope comes first. And I'm not sure if it helps at this point in 2026. So, Les Heures de Parfum that I'm going to show you today was launched in 2009. And it is being discontinued in 2026, as I just learned after that half an hour wait in line to enter half-empty boutique. So if you want to try any of them in person, I'll leave all the links that I know of below. Let me know if you already have any of them in your collection. Let's dive in more into the actual olfactory arts and try to decode what these smell like. The collection is presented as a repertoire of olfactory moments, hours, moods, some kind of atmospheres. There are a total of 13 numbered hours in the concept, although the hour number 9 has famously remained mysterious, absent, unreleased, or hidden, depending on how romantic you want to feel. These are not what I want to wear for brunch, with maybe one exception. Perfumes, they are not even exactly signatures. They are a clock of moods. There's promise, there's coveting, there's virtue, there's passion, daring, brilliance, forbidden pleasure, madness, loss, mystery, and the 13th hour. Let's walk through the clock. Leur promise. Number 1, the promised hour. I have heard that Promise by Cartier was supposed to be this very interesting take, unusual take on iris. Many reported that it smelled like a slightly bookish but smoky iris. Allegedly, petitgrain, herbs, iris, and sandalwood. It's supposed to smell like morning before the day has made any demands on you. I don't really feel the crispiness that I would expect from petitgrain, or that sense of clean linen. Maybe with the iris here is soft. I guess sandal helps to make it milkier, even though I don't detect anything lactonic. It's this in-between stage. The day hasn't started. Nothing happened for the day to be ruined. I guess that's a plus. But also nothing happened for you to be inspired for the day to begin. To me, it is somewhat similar to, not more accessible, but Houbigant Iris de Champs. It's a confident, quiet, nudie iris. It's not smoky, not to my nose. It doesn't have that fresh brilliance that I was looking for, neither the smokiness. So a promise to me, it's definitely an hour that you can potentially skip on. I feel there's a lot of clean, soft, nudie irises out there that you don't have to stand in line to get access to the boutique and pay nearly $300 for. Moving on. L'Heure Convoitée, the coveted hour. It's supposed to be carnation and strawberry. I've smelled it. I don't think I have it here. No, I don't have it here. I smelled it before. I was thoroughly unimpressed. And it's mostly because the perfumery has evolved since then, and the way that strawberry accord is being composed by perfumers these days is way more interesting, and the combination of strawberry or other notes became a little bit more either more satisfying in a gourmandise sense, or more interesting by contrast. So there it is, almost like a smell of a lip gloss, just a little bit more floral. I think it's too light to be considered truly raspberry and velvety, but also not flowy enough to be considered a juicy, musky, like sour, fruity musks that are popular, that were popular before and never so popular now. So it's right there in between, lost in time type of raspberry. Can it be potentially interesting? The L'Heure Convoitée, the number 2, the second hour, maybe. I rather felt a bit meh. It didn't quite go anywhere for me. Then we have the third hour, L'Heure Vertueuse, the virtuous hour. Haven't had a chance to try it, so the only thing that I can tell you is sort of the inspiration behind it. Could not find it anywhere, not in the boutiques, nowhere to be found so far. So it's supposed to be an apothecary garden, and it's very green, crushing stems, absinthe, thyme, lavender, rosemary. So it's supposed to be green, aromatic, medicinal, and bracing. That said, the virtuous hour is supposed to be about charging ahead, about discipline. But when we go toward the fourth hour, L'Heure Fougueuse, the fiery hour, this is exactly how I would describe the fourth hour, the Fougueuse. The same way that the virtuous, the third hour, was described. So, and that's something that I want to bring into your attention, that I find that even though those hours were released at different times and sometimes in disorganized, mysterious order, they were not released one by one, not consecutively. It was kind of like in batches, and just in a very chaotic order. I don't know how else to describe it. At the same time, a lot of them fall into roughly, I would say, 3 olfactory families. The nudie, even to my nose, and I love quiet watercolor perfumes, but even to my nose, these not much depth, not much development perfumes, and I would say that L'Heure Perdue and The Promise fall into that, and one more that we're going to talk about soon. The green category with a bit of these horse manure, green mimosa crushed stems, a lot of bitter, bright citruses, and the spices that don't soften it but rather make it even more austere. Those second family of perfumes that are very green, very zesty. And third family of perfumes that are a chocolate patchouli spicy smoky, which I thought was both cool and confusing, because at that point, just, 3 fragrances of each kind would do. We don't need, 3 variations of the same theme called as a different hour, but I'm not the creator. Maybe my nose is not delicately developed enough. So the hour number 4, the Fougueuse. This is the one that is the hardest for me to wear. I had to buy all of them blindly because that was the only way I could try them. So it has horse mane accord, right? Like it's the behind of a horse smell. But also it has a lot of very bright gin tonic type of freshness and the citrusy zest that elevates the fragrance into very bright, and I dare say posh cologne. You have to love piercing yellow-blue genre in perfumery, something that just charges ahead. The L'Heure Fougueuse is something that I would probably consider selling or regifting because this is a bit much for me. And also because there's another one that is of a similar kind that falls into that second green category in Les Heures collection that I prefer way more. But now, L'Heure Osée, the Daring Hour. That is one of the later releases. It was 2017, I see. And it's supposed to be a daring rose. Couldn't find it anywhere, couldn't try it anywhere. It's supposed to be a stripped rose. Rose has been done a million times. So the way we're supposed to perceive it, it's a stripped, bright, powdery, direct, and almost electric rose. A pink neon type of a rose. Can't tell you much more about it. I'm not sure if it saw any significant sales, but I must say a rose-centric perfume, as easy it is to do because the rose scent is universally beloved, it's also a hard sell in overcrowded perfume market. But now we're going toward number 6, Brillante, the Brilliant Hour. And this is another example of the green subfamily in Les Heures. The Brilliant Hour is even tougher for me, if you can believe it, than the 4th. It is sharp, sparkling lemon, vodka, gin. It's even more austere and bright of a cologne than the number 4. And if between the two, if I had to choose one, I would probably try to make the number 4 work. The Vertueuse, Fougueuse, the Fiery Hour. Because the number 6, it is just pierces through your nose. And it's so polished and it's so sharp. It's like a needle. It's like a needle. A lot of sharp citruses, we've been there, done that. A lot of them are fairly affordable in the market. A lot of that already exists in the aisles devoted to men in perfumery. It's really bright and polished. It doesn't fall into the synthetic annoyance. So the number 6, if you're a cologne guy, if you like your gin and tonic and your lemons, try it. Maybe it's the aldehydes that bring this to the volume of it to 200, like a horn at 4 in the morning. I appreciate it, I respect it, but I can't quite survive it. And even more so, it makes such a startling transition for me when you transition from the 6th hour to the 7th hour. That was my first purchase, first ever. I bought samples like this blindly on eBay. at the time when I barely made any excursions into niche perfumery. So I had a very unsophisticated nose and palette, and I was shocked. I bought some ouds by Cartier from the oud collection, and I bought the 7th hour Le Défendue, the forbidden hour. And despite me not having much appreciation for difficult or controversial notes, for something out of ordinary, I instantly fell in love with it. I think I sold, just by my descriptions of it, at least a couple of hundred bottles. A lot of people told me over the years that they bought a sample or a full bottle specifically because they heard my description. This is a late night at the Hogwarts library after a feast. There's a warm fire burning somewhere. You have a cup of coffee with dark chocolate right by it. There's a little bit of still a kitchen spice that you can smell coming from the main hall. But at the same time, since you're in a proper castle, you're only warm in the vicinity of the fire. You can feel this kind of wet, mossy draft that comes from the dark corners of the stone walls surrounding you. This is extraordinarily well-designed chocolate patchouli. It is so beautiful and so starkly different from everything else in this collection that I dare say I recommend you to try it the most. It's definitely my top 3 in terms of originality. I've never came across a patchouli like this ever again. So, here you have it. It's a dark gourmand. As I said, it's very dark chocolate plus mossy greenness of patchouli and some soft spices kind of supporting it. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Moving on. The 8th hour. Confusing. To me, if you go through the day, this procession of olfactory landscapes doesn't make any sense. That after L'Heure Défendue, the 7th hour, you will go to L'Heure Diaphane, diaphanous hour. And this I have a sample of. I've sampled it before. I was left dumbfounded and I kind of decided to skip it. But let's refresh my memory. Maybe I was wrong. There's still time. No, it's still the same. This is the most forgettable peony/rose floral. I am dumbfounded. How can you make the 7th hour, the 4th hour, and a few others, my favorites that we'll get into just in a second, and then also make this? If it's a peony with a rose, then make it the most peoniest of the peonies. I'm sure you've heard me complain a lot by now that I cannot find a believable, rich peony scent. I've tried Peony Zushu, Armani Privé, that version. I've tried all of the obvious suspects. Nothing makes me think of a real peony. It's always this abstract, unidentifiable, fresh, musky, zesty rose, maybe plus peony. It's never the peony. Peony has a lot of heart, in my view. It's almost spicy sometimes. It's so full and voluptuous. And I never can find a good perfume that has the multidimensional aspects of a peony as a flower. I understand there are many sorts and selections of different peony flowers, and they all smell different, and still. So, yeah, that's you have it. It's simple. It's watery, it's transparent. It says peony, rose, lychee. Maybe there is a lychee. It's this soapy peony rose situation that probably you can buy in mass market for $15 for 100 ml? I'm a bit confused. I think this is the one that deserves more attention, especially after the invention of Yves Saint Laurent blouse, of Ex Nihilo Fleur Narcotique or Lost in Paradise. I think this theme, if reimagined by Cartier with more depth or a more interesting twist, could really blossom. That said, they have a whole floral line that I think succeeds this particular attempt at a floral. And we'll talk about it right after we finish with the hours. All right, the 8th hour, Le Défendue. Innocent, forgettable, nothing special. I'm not sure if this deserves any more of our attention. But now we get to my other favorite that I think is still not truly duped by anyone in any capacity. This is L'heure folle, the crazy hour. In translation, that said, let me break it down for you. Le folle is one of the best combinations of this Cartier greenness that we experienced before with berries. Sour, bright, sugary berries. It's not even the fresh berries per se, but it's the berry candies, hard candy with, cranberry or raspberry or blackcurrant flavors. Some people complain that this does smell a bit too synthetic to be a believable berry scent. I love it. It lasts in the scorching heat of Florida for over 8 hours. It brings me back to life when I'm about to collapse. And it's not, at the same time, it is not brain drilling. I'm a hard sell on beast mode fragrances. I get tired of them very quickly. A lot of the modern bases, I find they smell cheap. They smell very predictable. And they make all perfumes have the same dry down, which is not cool. This is beautiful. It is as well structured conceptually. It's interesting enough as a green, fresh, sweet, sour scent, as it is fun because of that berry candy nuance in it. Folle is one of my top Cartier scents. I heavily recommend you try it, especially if you're in the market for some fresh green plus berries concoctions. Fun, a masterpiece, truly. Okay. 11th hour, L'heure perdue, the lost hour. This is the manifestor I mentioned. It's fully created from all lab-created molecules. To me, it falls into the nude category, just like Diaphane and The Promise, which is a quiet iris. It's in that category, not a Parfum or to dullness, quiet, makeup-y, quiet, nudie type of irises. I smelled it in the boutique, and I didn't even care to take a blotter with me. It was probably an interesting experiment at the time, but not every experiment needs to become a product, in my view. So that's just my opinion. But 11th hour, L'heure perdue. Interesting manifesto. I appreciate the concept, but I don't see the point of spending the money, and it was not really interesting enough for me to wear it, to really make it my own. All right, it's getting interesting. The 12th hour, right? 11th was the Perdue. 12th hour, Le Mystérieuse, the mysterious hour. I have sprayed it many times, and specifically for this episode, for you guys. It's all for you. All of it is for you. I bought myself a sample just to make sure that I was not misrepresenting it from my vague memories. This is that third category of smoky gourmandise take on patchouli that I love so much in the 7th hour, Le Défendue. And I apologize for all French speakers that I'm butchering the names. I do my best, and yet I fail. The Mysterious hour, the 12th one, to me is a weaker, less interesting versions of Le Défendue of the 7th hour. The 12th hour is supposed to give you incense, elemi patchouli, coriander, some kind of resinous, shadowy feel. It is all true, it's a beautiful patchouli. It's even a little bit smoky, maybe just a little. It's a very well married patchouli scent that is not too aromatherapy. It's a patchouli with heritage, with a pedigree, with a PhD. I enjoy it. I will absolutely wear it. That said, I told you, there is just a much more superior version in this very collection that over-delivers. So compared to that, 12th hour, the mysterious one, is just, yeah, sure. I respect that. And when it comes to smokiness, finally I get to show you. This is my most recent acquisition, the 13th hour. Treizième, the 13th hour. It is Laurent in her darkest. The first time I smelled it, it smelled to me as salami. And that was it. I could not, for the love of God, explain to myself or others why would anyone want to smell like they're sitting surrounded by salami. But as the time moved on, and remember, I tried them for the first time when I knew close to nothing about niche perfumery. I was Lancôme Miracle girl. I was Le Parkinson girl. I was Escada Lily girl. I was Burberry Weekend girl. All nice wearable perfumes, but they're nothing like this. And then I could not forget it. I think I gave away the sample, and for next decade, I just kept it in my mind. And I kept going back to it. And this year, I realized I think I'm ready. I'm a grown-up perfume enthusiast now. I think I can tackle on that salami just fine. This is smoky as smoke I've ever felt, but it's not bitter. I am such a big fan of it now that I can hardly sustain my excitement. 13th hour is a paragon of birch smoke perfume without leather, without bitterness, without an obvious vetiver, because we always get smoke with vetiver or with some kind of hookah bar gourmandise sweetness, or with this oily birch tar bitterness, or sometimes it even goes sour, like Marquise de Sade by Tatli d'Orange. This one stays ethereally gray smoke. It is unimaginable to me. How did she confine it so well? It reminds me of that olfactory cloud, the trapping of the sand that they created with the engineers for the Cartier performance. That how can you trap smoke in a glass, in a crystal glass? It just stays there, pure, spiritual, philosophically dry. What a creation. I'm blown away. I am blown away. Now to the florals. Cartier florals are often misunderstood because they're not always lush in the obvious way. Laurent is not building a flower market or dipping flowers in desserts. She's often building the idea of a flower as a living structure, sort of a crystal flower, which is carotte. To me is metallic apples, but maybe watery, like pollen fallen in water, shadow of a leaf, these type of very conceptual creations, which is her signature. I've had Basé-Volé, which is a flute of a lily. I enjoyed it a lot. To me, the dry down was a little bit generic floral base. It just kind of, it becomes less unique as it dries down. So I regifted it to a friend and she loves it dearly. That said, Cartier has its own line that dedicated to florals, and this is their more recent Haute Perfumery release as a line. I went to the boutique. I didn't try them all, but they have very limited selection, and I've tried Las Vegas boutique and I've tried New York boutique. You would think that New York City boutique of Cartier has it all. Not really the case, and they also, in both locations, had no samples. Go figure. But I still got to spray Per Lilas, the Lilacs by Cartier. It is the same concept of fresh watery lilacs as En Passant by Frédéric Malle is creating and Brocard, Lilacs After Rain, is going after, but minus fruity aspects of lilac and added these typical green citrusy zestiness that you can find in the Hours and many other creations by Mathilde Laurent. To that and Eau de Cartier Declaration, she has this signature way she does fresh green notes. So those are there in the Pour Lilas plus Lilacs plus, and that was unexpected, soil. It did have this unmistakable nuance of wet soil. It was weird, but I loved it. Another one that I enjoyed even more was Muguet by Cartier. I think they're close enough and similar enough that you wouldn't need both. You don't need both Lilacs and Muguet unless that's exactly your comfort zone. I want both, but it is hard to make fresh lily of the valley scent that is not drilling into your brain and just not making you feel either desperate or doesn't take you back into the vintage times and, you know, Grandma Muguet Parfum. There's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of people associate lily of the valley as an accord with something dated, something vintagey. It may be an added plus or it may be a distraction. Those Lily of the Valleys in the Muguet by Cartier, they are the freshest I've ever smelled without drilling into my brain. This watery green stem freshness that is put in both Per Lilas and Muguet is so delicious. And it's very Mathilde Laurent, it's very Cartier. So if I had to make one recommendation, one, of Cartier Floral, if you can put your hands on Muguet and you enjoy the idea of Lily of the Valley, do that. Alternatively, Per Lilas or Basé-Volé. I also want to mention that these florals are very long lasting, maybe not 10, 12 hours like Le Folle or the green one, the green hours from Cartier, which is 4, 6, right? And the 10th. But very long lasting. That said, I haven't found a rose by Cartier that impressed me. That remains a kind of an open challenge that I hope I'll get to experience something groundbreaking from them soon enough. And this brings us to the last line that I haven't touched upon yet, beside their mass market offerings, which is their ouds. Ouds are very hard for me to enjoy, I gotta confess, so I'm gonna keep it short. These are cleaned up Western take on ouds with an addition of a facet being santal or vanilla. I've heard that the most intricate and unique oud from that line is oud and mint and oud. I will leave the review of those for those who are truly oud connoisseurs, because they all kind of smell the same to me, and I'm not exactly sure how that stands against the other ouds in the market, because a lot of ouds smell the same to me, not gonna lie. Now, it brings us to a rather shocking piece of news that I learned from my Cartier shepherd, who wouldn't leave me out of her sight even for a second when I was finally admitted to a Cartier boutique in New York City. We actually made good friends, and she told me that Cartier is discontinuing most of its Haute Perfumery creations. It's going to be a severe bloodbath of consolidation, things that sell, things that don't, potentially renaming, potentially restructuring of the whole Haute Perfumery concept. And if you are in the market to touch the legacy of and cross the triple velvet rope that Cartier has created for us perfume enthusiasts in order to try its perfumes, now is the time. As I said, I have quite a vault to share with you guys. If you want me to get you a royal Cartier Haute Perfumery sampler, I'm happy to do so. I'll leave the links below. When it comes to their mass market designer accessible perfume lines, I maintain that Cartier Le Panther Parfum, this is what the bottle looks like, they have a lot of flankers, it remains the best luxurious shipper with a classical homage that I've experienced in a long time. And if you don't know what shippers are, what they smell like, and you want to have something modern, wearable, pleasant, friendly, and yet a true shipper, I think you should start with that. That said, Le Panther, Eau de Toilette, Eau de Parfum, they're all decent, and I'm happy to do a designer section of Cartier review, because I have a bunch of samples for him and for her. If you guys are interested in me of doing a separate review, I just want us to dive deeper into the lore, into what makes perfume brands interesting. That's what makes us exploring these worlds worthwhile. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like. Share your takes on perfumes from Cartier, be it Haute Perfumery, Florals, Ouds, or their mass market offerings. And subscribe, because that means that we'll see each other in the next one.